Okay, so hello Amal, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
We are in a podcast called Droids and Druids
Ooh.
because we talk about fantasy and science fiction, and we always start the question asking, are you more of a druid or a droid?
I'm definitely more of a druid. Usually I have difficulty with this or that answers, but
Yeah.
no, this is actually very, very simple for me. Yeah, I've always been very drawn to the woods and that side of things. I love science fiction, but strictly speaking, droids or druids, druids every time.
Yeah, actually, reading this book, I think I knew the answer to this one. I love it. So let's talk about the book, your latest novel, The River Has Roots. So how did you get the inspiration for the story? I know there's a folk song.
Yes.
So
Yeah, there's a ballad called a ballad type called The Cruel Sister, and so there are lots of versions, but they all have this in common, that there's an older sister who's jealous of a younger sister, and she drowns her younger sister because of a man. Like there's a man who's courting both of them, but somehow he's not the villain, and so she drowns her younger sister. The younger sister goes through a series of transformations, becomes an instrument, who then, at the wedding of the older sister and the man, sings the story of her murder, and then the bad sister gets what's coming to her. And there are lots of versions of this. The first one that I heard was from Lorena McKenna, the Bonnie Swans. And I'm an older sister, and I have a younger sister who I love very much, and who I would not, under any circumstances, want to harm in this way. And so there is so much in the song that provokes the imagination, that I love the transformations. There's so much that's eerie and strange. So I've always wanted to play with it, but I also love my sister and wanted to write something that was like, what if you could play with these elements of the ballad, but have sisters that love each other instead? And what if you made the man the villain, just as an exercise, and this was what resulted.
a much more beautiful story. I think no, it's actually very beautiful. I love it. And talking about transformation, you also talk about the grammar and how can it be magic, no? In a way,
Yes.
I love this way of putting words. I don't know. How did you come about this?
Well, I remember, I can't remember when I learned that the word grammar has its roots in the word grammarie for magic, basically. But once I learned that, it was just it blew my mind. It really activated my imagination, and it made me want to tell any student who was having to study literature or grammar specifically that there is this really fascinating origin to grammar, that it doesn't have to be something that is a boring set of rules that you're following. And there are magic systems that are very interested in laying out the rules, like magic is a technology and stuff that has provable, repeatable results. And then there are other kinds of magic systems where magic is this unruly and strange, numinous thing that is not consistent necessarily, but kind of happens. And I liked the idea of there being both possibilities here, that there are people who will turn grammar into a set of rules, grammarians who are teaching it in universities and stuff, but that there are people who are more alive to the possibilities of grammar, and the ways in which, people will say poetic license, to change the expectation of a sentence and stuff like that. But we're all talking about grammars, different grammars. So I like the idea of playing with that for magic. I also just love playing with words generally. And because words are what we use to tell a story, and I think of telling stories as a kind of magical act where you're provoking in someone else's imagination this thing that's inside of your own head, There's something about that that's very beautiful. I just wanted to make it as literal as possible, to be like, these words, this grammar and stuff like that, this is magic as well.
It is. It's magic, and it's really poetic.
Thank you.
Actually, and so let's talk about the sisters. They are lovely, both of them, and but they are so different as well. So one likes riddles, and the other crime stories.
Yes,
So
yeah.
how did you come to that?
They listen to very different podcasts, basically. Isabel loves true crime, and Esther loves, probably historical deep dives into various things. Yeah, they are very different. So one of the things in this book is that I tried to play with is that in ballads, whenever there are sisters, they have to be different from each other, right? Like the kind of the economy of the ballad cannot let things be the same. You can't have two sisters who are the same. You have to have sisters who are opposites, not just different from each other. One has dark hair, one has light hair. One is, sunshine and smiles, and the other is dark and frown. Like the kind of inherent drama or conflicts of a ballad are in high contrast, right? But I also think there's a thing that happens very naturally with siblings where, without necessarily noticing it, you define each other. You define yourselves against each other, even when you love each other. You're like how rocks polish each other when they're tumbling against each other. You are, if you are close in age, if you are sharing a room, if you are sharing space, then you start to kind of figure out what is mine and what is my sister's. And my sister and I did this a lot when we were little. Like, to this day, I think of green as her color, and she thinks of blue as my color. She looks amazing in blue. I look pretty great in green. But like in my head, it's like, no, but that's her color though. Like that belongs to her. Truly only in like very recently have we kind of started wearing them, like wearing each other's colors in this way. And various other little things. So, but those differences, like, they don't have to be sources of conflict. They can be, but and in the book, like, the fact that one of them loves murder ballads and one of them loves riddle songs is kind of more an illustration of their respective interests and personalities, but it's not like they are in camps against each other as a consequence, but yeah.
No, they complement each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have one thing in common, which is music, right? And
Yes.
songs. So why music is another language in this story, and the voice as an instrument, also the harp, right?
Yes.
So why music?
Well, so initially, I mean, I'm retelling a ballad, so I wanted music to be a big part of the story. But because it's also, kind of a love letter to my sister, it's partly dedicated to my sister and partly dedicated to my harp teacher, Huda Nasim, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And so there's a harp in the initial ballad that I heard. The girl gets turned into a harp, and I play the harp. And so when I was writing it initially, I was commissioned to write this for audio initially. And so I thought it would be kind of cool if, like, I played the harp on an audio thing. I think that could be nice. And then that project fell through, and I ended up, like, making it longer for tour instead. But did still get to play music on the audiobook with my sister. So on the audiobook, my sister and I sang, but like my sister and I grew up singing together. And every time I describe Esther and Isabel singing together, I am just describing how it feels to me to sing with my sister. Like, there's a thing that our voices do together that I don't feel like my voice doesn't do that with anyone else's voice. Like, there's just a kind of like braiding that happens together. That I think is just partly because we are family members, But when I say in the book, like, they say that voices run in families or something like that. But it just, it's all part of that for me. Did that answer the question? I hope it did. Okay.
Yes, it's amazing. And we also have a beautiful love story in this book. We also found this in the This Is How You End the Time War, another lovely love story. So how is it that you came to get these two love stories? They are both from about people coming from two different and separate worlds, and why is that interesting to you? And this will be the last question, I think.
Sure. I think it's that, I think that's such a good question. I'm trying to not just say, well, that was my experience of love. I did, my partner and I were long distance for some time, for many years actually, and in different ways. But I think actually it's more that now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's partly because of the internet. I think it's because when I started using the internet in the mid-90s, I didn't have like close friends around me. The internet was like this magic portal that you could open and then find friends in it. And they were far away. Like to find people who shared my interests, I had to like find them in other cities, other countries and stuff like that. And so I think that a lot of my foundational experiences of friendship and romance have been over distance mediated through text. So it could be like a millennial condition in some way, like that I got to experience an internet where words were the bridge between you and someone very far away. And that's not really the internet we live in anymore. We're inundated with text that is obstructive and antagonizing and obscuring and full of misinformation and full of, AI-generated nonsense that is not actually, reaching out to someone with a hunger in your soul and finding someone who can answer it with their words. Instead, you have to filter all of that out in order to find something genuine that is a connection. So I think that whenever I think of love and whenever I write love, I think that there is at its heart a kind of yearning across a gap, across a distance, because that kind of has been my experience just in a very broad spectrum way.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can relate as a millennial as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so thank you so much. We don't have so much time, but it was lovely to meet you.
Likewise.
And thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.